Good day, students. This is Dr. SB Mahlambi, the lecturer for TMS3721, which is a module that is looking at teaching life orientation in the further education and training. That is the Department of Basic Education. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all, and I hope that you have already found this module engaging. And I just want to give you a brief preview of Learning Unit 1, especially as we prepare to complete your MCQ that will be done very soon. And everyone that has visited the learning management system, the Moodle site, have seen that Learning Unit 1 has been given this outcome and the assessment criteria. In short, Learning Unit 1 is trying to give you a background of the policies that we use in the Department of Basic Education. These are the policies that we looked at for Learning Unit 1. The norms and standards, which talks to the teacher roles in the classroom, personal administrative measures, which is the responsibilities of a teacher. Then we have the guidelines for responding to learner diversity and White Paper 6, which looks at inclusion in the classroom. Well, I'm not going to talk much about life orientation CARES document. This will talk about in details in Learning Unit 3 when we begin to talk about teaching and learning. So this is how the Moodle platform looks. We have your introduction, life orientation as a school subject, the role of a teacher, the responsibilities of a life orientation teacher, and attending to learner diversity and inclusion. Well, the norms and standards for teachers looked at the 7 roles of the teacher. These are the roles that you need to fulfill as a team member in the school whenever you get employment. And these are important, because when the Department of Basic Education employs you, it actually wants you to fulfill these roles. Secondly, we have the responsibilities of a teacher, where now we get into the classroom, which is teaching. You have to perform extra and co-curricular activities. Also, a life orientation teacher has to fulfill administrative duties, interact with stakeholders, and communicate as well with stakeholders. Well, we have also looked at the principles of the National Curriculum Statement, grades R to 12, which is our, curriculum. And one of the forums in the Moodle platform actually wanted you to take one of these principles and try to explain how does it relate to the context of South Africa, and how do you view the principle in terms of teaching and learning in the classroom. And I would like us to now look at inclusion. By definition, inclusion refers to all learners being able to access and gain equal opportunities for education and learning. So it is now the duty of the life orientation teacher to make sure that they reject any form of segregation, any form of discrimination, making sure that places of learning are less restrictive, that learners, they feel welcomed, learners, they become part of the system in the classroom. Now, every life orientation teacher is expected to acknowledge that all learners can learn when given support. The teacher has to accept and respect that learners are different in some way. A teacher should enable structures and system and try and implement learning methodologies that will assist them to meet the needs of all the learners in their classroom. But also, life orientation teachers should acknowledge and accept and respect the differences in learners, the differences that the learners will bring into the classroom. Inclusivity is about broadening formal school and acknowledge that learning occurs in spaces outside of school as well, meaning that learners will bring knowledge into the classroom. They have some sort of knowledge that we can build on. But also, as a life orientation teacher, you are expected to maximize the participation of learners and work towards minimizing any form of barrier in the classroom. Lastly, we need to empower learners by developing their individual strengths and thus enabling each learner to participate critically in the learning process. This is a tall order to request from a teacher, but a teacher that goes into the classroom and they have the notion of inclusivity in the classroom will try and implement all these things. Then we have the concept of diversity in the life orientation classroom. Once you understand what inclusion entails, then it would be much easier for a teacher to then implement the concept diversity in the classroom. Diversity is a recognition that learners in a life orientation classroom are unique in terms of ability, in terms of their academic background, in terms of their educational experiences and learning style. So diversity, it's a recognition that when you plan for your learners, you take into account their educational, their academic experiences and how they learn. You infuse them together so that you can attend to their individual needs. So to attend to the diverse needs of learners in the classroom, we differentiate our practices. A teacher is expected to differentiate their practices. Now, differentiation is about modifying, changing, adapting, extending, and varying teaching methodologies and strategies and the content of the curriculum so that it comes down to the level of the learner. So when we talk about differentiation, we actually mean that a life orientation teacher should be able to differentiate the content that should be presented to the learner. That is making the content meaningful to the learner, making sure that the content being delivered actually meets a learner's needs and interests, that the content that is being delivered is delivered in an environment that promotes a maximum participation of learners. But also we differentiate the learning environment by promoting cooperation, teacher-learner cooperation, by developing a classroom and a school culture that recognizes that learners have individual capabilities, that learners come into the classroom and they have unique needs that should be fulfilled through classroom, classroom, what's the term that we use? Classroom practices that learners, they feel protected against all forms of harassment, all forms of mental harm through communication. But lastly, we differentiate the teaching methods, that the methods that we use to present our lesson, the methods that we use to present the activities in the class, and how we actually organize the lesson. Actually, it meets the learner halfway. The methods, again, take into account the diverse learning needs of learners in our classroom. And lastly, the policy also calls for the life orientation teacher to be aware of all the curriculum and institutional barriers to learning that could arise because of the content, that can arise because of the language of teaching and learning, how the classroom is organized and managed, because the management of your classroom is very important, how teaching and learning unfolds in the classroom, and the methods that we use in the teaching process, and the pace again. Sometimes the ATP, the annual teaching plan, teachers have always complained that it is fast paced, meaning that you have so much work to do in a term, and the time it becomes impossible to complete the curriculum for that particular term because of the diverse needs of learners, the type of learners that you have in the classroom, and the availability of the learning materials, the LTSM, and how we assess learners. We will be talking about assessment in Learning Unit 4, get into details into assessment. So these are some of the barriers that might be brought into the classroom by the curriculum that we implement in the classroom. So it is then important for the teacher, when they plan their lesson, when they deliver the content into the learner, they should be aware of these things, and try and find ways and means and on how they should identify inclusivity, and identify and try and implement diverse strategies in teaching and learning in the classroom. When in April, I think the second week of April, from the 14th, I want you to check your Moodle platform assessment 1. You are going to complete an MCQ. This MCQ looks at Learning Unit 1. Well, so you need to understand mostly the concept of inclusion and the concept of diversity, because the bulk of the questions in that MCQ comes from those two concepts. And I would like to take this opportunity to wish you the best of luck for this year. And please don't we don't take this for granted, and to say you know everything when you go and attempt the MCQ. The MCQ is timed. You have 4 hours to complete the MCQ. So once you sit down, you must complete it. You cannot say, I'm going to complete half of the MCQ and then complete another half on the different time slot. Once you sit down, you must complete the MCQ. So I would request you to, to take your, what is it, load shedding schedule from ESCOM, and make sure that when you sit for your MCQ, you are not going to be disturbed by load shedding. You are not going to be disturbed by the network connections and stuff. So this has been stretched over 3 days, I think. So I would request you to choose the best possible times. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ntate. What I will do, man.